Welcome everyone to a special edition of the Wild Paw Dog Podcast with me, Karen Wild. I'm very pleased to welcome our guest today, Emma Milne, who is a well-known vet, very focused on welfare and very well known in general for her work towards, animals and how best to look after them. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So this is kind of a special edition emergency podcast because we're, getting asked lots of questions about what to do during the current situation of, some people are in lockdown, some people are being given generic advice. So we thought we'd give you some main tips about what you can do, particularly for your dog, because obviously we're worried about whether to take them out for a walk or not, and it depends what country you're in. But do remember the what we're talking about is as of today, which is the 25th of March 2020. Things might change when you listen to this tomorrow, the next day, and so on. So I thought kick off with what are we facing here, Emma? What's this impacting on dog owners, do you think?
I think it's a really very surreal time for everyone. I live in France, so we're probably a week or two ahead of the UK as far as cases and lockdown are concerned. So, for example, where we are and everywhere here now, cycling was banned last week. We now have to carry a declaration every time we leave the house to say why we are out. There's a certain number of reasons you're allowed out. And from an exercise point of view, we are allowed 1 kilometre from our house for a maximum of 1 hour a day. So ours has got much, much tighter, and I suspect that will happen in the UK. But I think for dog owners, the main worries are people worrying that they can infect their dogs or catch COVID from their animals. And as far as we're aware, that's not possible. So don't worry about that. I think all the normal hygiene things apply to animals that they always did. If you're handling your animals, wash your hands afterwards and all those normal things. But I think from an exercise point of view, people, it depends where people live, and you'll know behaviourally this is going to be the biggest challenge for people, is trying to ensure that their dogs are still stimulated, and obviously exercise restrictions might become an issue. But I don't know whether from your point of view, from the behaviour side of stuff, what do you think is important?
Well, I think it's interesting. We're getting a mixed response because obviously from a behavioural perspective, I deal with a lot of dogs that don't deal well with close contact with other dogs now, and now are finding that they're not getting flooded by other dogs in their faces. They're actually, in a way, ironically, their lot has improved. I think dogs are very good at judging social distance themselves, and we tend to overload them. So this has helped them to an extent. So I know that's a very almost like a selfish behavioural viewpoint, but I think there are positives in this. So that's certainly something that I've come across, and several people have mentioned that to me. But the other side,
that's good.
Yeah, the other side of things though is I think particularly if you've got a dog that is younger and needs socialisation. So a lot of people have had their puppies planned for a very, very long time. Our puppy classes, we've obviously had to stop those because you can't use a public area for them. And, group meetings are not allowed. So there's absolutely even if you're at a distance, it's completely irresponsible to do that now. So classes are out, so what we need to think about is what we can do with our puppies that is currently allowed. So things like puppies, there is some research that showed that you can socialize puppies even from a distance. They will still take on board what they're seeing, what they can smell really well, they can experience. They don't need to be right up close. They don't need to be touched by every stranger they meet, although that's helpful if they enjoy that contact. At the moment, that's not appropriate because it means we as humans would be just too close. So what you can do is, if you happen to be you have your exercise per day, and depending on what the law says at the moment, we're currently allowed to walk the dog, so you can still take them out. You can still obviously following normal infection control, like you say with a puppy, if they're not vaccinated you don't want to be putting them down anyway, but you can carry them with you, so you can currently still do that. So that's something. You can work on in your back garden with an awful lot of things you can work on, and not letting them get frustrated on a lead, teaching them a recall. You can get sound recordings that you can play around the house, so they're all online, they're absolutely free. You can quickly.
I think that's the thing though as well, because the habituation side of stuff, everyone can concentrate on that as well. You know, for people who've got very small gardens who were relying perhaps on being outside more, there's still lots of positive experiences that they can give their animal.
Yeah, completely.
I think
like handling, you know, I mean, we omit that, and that's so important when a vet needs to examine your dog, or when somebody needs to pet your dog. You know, people coming up and going away within your household, you can practice all of those things in your house. You don't need, or your flat, you don't need to be out and about to do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from my point of view, one of the things that I can envisage possibly being an issue, well, a few things to say about this. Firstly, the veterinary profession is really, really trying to get the message across, particularly in the last 2 days, this has all changed, that most surgeries, I believe now in the UK, are open for emergencies only. And that if that isn't in place yet, lots of them will probably will continue to do primary vaccinations for puppies, because obviously that's very important. But outside of that, things like worming checks and obesity checks, and as you say, puppy socialization classes, because as a profession we are obviously meeting people all the time, every day, which is putting lots of people, clients and vets and nurses and everyone, at risk as well. So we want to try and avoid animals going to the vets if possible. But also, I think where you're going to have big exercise restriction, one thing that I hate seeing, even in normal times, is people that just take one of those ball throwers, go to a park and endlessly throw balls for their animals. It's quite, it's an easy, convenient way for people to exercise their dogs, but it's very poor long-term for dogs' joints. Because it's all acceleration, deceleration and sudden turns. And I worry that with the restrictions on people, dogs will end up being stimulated in a really odd, unnatural way. So all the time that you have access to the outside, I would encourage people to try and take their dogs on stimulating walks, you know, so different areas like woods and fields and you know, as many different places as you can within the limits of the country that you're living in, and try not to just do repetitive things. Also, one of the big things with ball fetching particularly is that it's one of the activities that some dogs particularly absolutely love and will not stop when they're exhausted. So as the weather gets warmer, that could become a real issue for heat exhaustion and things like that.
And that kind of obsession, I've certainly come across this with work, and one of my own dogs that I used to have, my collie, was like that, where and I know a lot of other owners have mentioned this to me, that you know, their dogs are so obsessed with it. As you say, they get exhausted, but also they're hyperstimulated, and then they're almost wired, you know, and they're really difficult to settle down, to control. And I do think that using toys for exercise is a good idea, but I'm just about to do a video actually about toy play and safety, because I think I don't mean joint safety, obviously I'm not a vet, but that's very important. It's about the behavioural safety, because dogs have got huge frustration over toys as well. And I think they're like any tool. They're a training tool, they're an activity tool, they're not a replacement for a variety of things, as you say. The other thing about training generally, obviously I'm biased because I'm a trainer, but we find that those puppies and dogs that have even the most basic training skill, like the basic things, a good sit, you know, sitting waiting for their toy, sitting waiting for their dinner, coming when you call them, everyone underestimates how incredibly important they are. They're really good for several reasons. One is that they obviously teach the thing that you want, which is come back or don't grab or whatever. But they also teach the dog the conversation between you and them. So they understand that communication of, okay, you do this, then I do that, then you say this thing.
And everyone's happy.
Yeah, so they you know, the interesting thing about dogs is that they do it generally because they want to do it, especially if we're using positive reinforcement, you know, rewards of some sort. They're doing it because they think they're getting something out of it. So in a way, they feel like they're in control of the transaction, even though it's something that we've cued them to do. So they understand then, oh, if I do that, then that will get you, human, to do this thing. And it helps them feel like controlled about their environment. They're not controlling you in any big grand sense, but they will try it again. So if you teach them something that is quite respectful, you know, like sitting before they're allowed to do something, then they will start to sit as a please, you know. So it
Yeah.
never underestimate just going over those skills, and it's the first things we teach to our puppy. It's really useful. And I had someone say about, oh well, I don't want to teach tricks to my dog, but they're all tricks. Everything you teach your dog is a trick. It's just whether it's socially important, useful, or not. And sometimes even things that seem like they're not useful at all, you know, can be incredibly useful. So say asking your dog to shake a paw, I wouldn't teach it to a very young puppy because they tend to like bat you with their paw. But an older dog, it's really good if you need to look at their paws and examine them. So that has a really good benefit.
But I think from my point of view, as a dog, when we have a cat and 2 gerbils now, because of more of our sort of work situation. But my 2 dogs that were the absolute, you know how heartbroken I was when I lost them, but they were with me for 15 years, collie crosses, so pretty easy to train. But I think the most important thing is recall. And when I've walked those dogs for hours every day for 15 years, and the number of animals that are out of control. And I personally, I don't like seeing dogs on leads all the time. It makes me incredibly sad how focused on leads the UK is. Dogs must be under control. That's a given. But I think if more people spent time on good recall, we'd have much fewer behavioural problems, dogs being defensive on leads, dogs not getting enough exercise, never being allowed off their leads, because the minute they do, they just disappear. And I think if people are at home bored, this is the time, no matter what age your dog is, to work on it. If they happen to be walking towards you, say their name, give them some praise when they get there. I think there's so many people who, the dog very quickly learns that, oh, well, you know, either nothing good happens when I come back, because if they take a while to come back, then they get shouted at. Or they're, you know, this is better than I do. I'm not a behavioural specialist, but the people who constantly say their dog's name in all the situations, so it just ends up meaning nothing.
Yeah.
But for me, recall is just so important because it opens up yours and your dog's life. If you are absolutely sure that no matter what happens, if you say come back or whatever your command is going to be, the dog's going to come back. It is life changing for everyone concerned.
And there's loads of ways you can incorporate it into your day to day. So the one problem that people generally have with calling their dog back is that they don't set it up in a way that is fun. And by that, I don't mean, you know, waving a biscuit at them like people tend to criticize us for. That's not it. If your dog is doing something that you'd rather they didn't do, and you call them away and you don't pay that dog in whatever currency that's valuable to them, you are the biggest spoil sport on the planet, and they aren't going to keep doing it. So you have to get that seesaw tipping in your favor. You know, the balance towards you has to be, I am the VIP, I'm the most important thing in your life because I pay the best, I'm the most fun, I'm going to give you a game with something. It could be food, it could be that you just, you know, have like the one thing that they absolutely love. But if you're trying to compare what you offer to, I don't know, rabbit poo, it's not the most flattering thing, you know, to be like, well, I'm actually less important than even that. So I think you can still do that in home. If we all end up that you have to walk your dog on a lead, you're not allowed to take it off lead, for example, I don't know what's coming for us, you know, and that's stressful for us all. You can still walk your dog on lead and practice recall. What you do, you start walking, you let them get a little bit away from you, and you call them back and you pay them. And again, we don't want our dogs to get fat, so you measure out what you give them in the daytime. You maybe have a portion of that which is high value food, or, you know, or their favorite toy. You save it for that and you use it for that over and over again as you're walking. So you can walk forward, call them back, play, walk forward, call them back, give them a treat, walk forward, maybe let them sniff at something and then call them away from that, but still make a big, you know, exciting, wow, that was so great, I'm so glad you did that, here is your reward. Because, you know, dogs aren't fools, you know, they'll soon balance out what's good for them, and it's got nothing to do with, you know, whether they value you. Of course they do, but they see you all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also, what is, if the UK goes the same way as us, where, for example, so I had 2 collie crosses that we would walk normally 3 or 4 hours every day, and obviously now those people are being restricted even time wise. So if, say, your dog's time outdoors is cut in half, just do more stuff in the house. You know, dogs are really happy to play and do training and be mentally and physically stimulated in the house. They don't have to be tearing round.
No,
Although
I've just
bizarrely,
a load of videos on that as well. Sorry, I was just saying it's just made me think, because I'd spent the weekend actually doing a load of just indoor indoor games that you can play with your dog. So if you can't go out, or maybe you're not very well, I mean, you know, some of us aren't very well, we're recovering, the poor old dog sat there, or we've got no money, you know, we can't go out to the pet shop and buy toys, it's not an essential, you know, those things, you've got stuff around the house. I've got a blanket Scrabble that you can go through and get them to do that. There's just, I mean, I used inners of toilet rolls for one exercise and got taken the mickey out of, because it was like, no one's got toilet roll. And other just bits and bobs that you've got around the house, and they're on my channel, The Wild Paw. So I'll put a link for that in the podcast. Anyway, sorry, you were going to say.
No, you made me think of something else, actually. Our dogs used to love playing hide and seek. They'd go nuts for it, and it was something that we used to mess around playing when we were, you know, playing indoors with them. But no, I was just saying, our cat, I don't know whether it's because we're here all the time, she's gone a bit nuts. She keeps like having these absolutely mad half hours, or maybe it's just that she does that all the time, but we don't see her all the time. But she's loving the fact that the kids are here. She's, you know, chasing them around the house. Keep hearing these squeals from one of the kids where Stella's leapt out at them from some hidden corner. But suddenly the gerbils have got more attention. They've had these lovely, you know, hide and seek treat things made for them. And so I think the thing is, it is a really difficult time for lots of people, of course. And, you know, we've been homeschooling now for a week and a half. We haven't seen our friends. The kids haven't seen their friends. And we live in a really sociable area. So it's going to be hard for everyone. But I think there are some real positives that can come out of it. I think people can really focus on improving their relationships with their pets. And hopefully, as you say, get some good training done and try and make the most of the walks. You know, what I used to love walking my dogs, and you can have some really lovely time together without just standing there, you know, repetitively throwing things. But I think from the veterinary point of view, take home message would be to try and avoid your dogs getting injured. I know that's an obvious thing to say, but those kinds of really over exercising, try and avoid that. And also, you know, sort of respect your vets. Most of them will be more than happy to give telephone advice. The RCVS, which is our sort of governing body of, we've had this long debate going on about whether vets can do telemedicine, and that's all going to be a bit more lenient, I think. So if you're in any doubts at all, just ring your vets. They'll have someone who can speak to you. But please try and be patient and understanding with them if they decide that what, you know, your issue is not an emergency enough that it would put people at risk by going in. The other thing that some practices are doing now is actually meeting, having a nurse in protective gear or a vet in protective gear go out, get the dog or whichever pet it is, and bring it into the surgery so that the clients aren't coming in. So, you know, just try and work with your vets, I guess, to try and keep everything as under control as possible.
Yeah, and listening to that safety advice is really important, even though you're really worried about your pet at the time. I mean, I totally get it. And it's the same in behaviour. Obviously, we can't hold one-to-one classes, but we can hold them remotely. I've done some online training videos for my class clients, so that's very exciting. Everyone's very excited. But I've got some lovely pictures of them all watching us on TV, which I think is quite funny. So, you know, Belle the Dalmatian watching Karen to train her dog on their telly in their lounge. It's just so interesting. And everyone's exploring the new technology. So if you're a trainer like myself, don't be put off, you know. And if you're an owner and you're looking for behavioural help, it might be that it's crystallised now because you're in the house all the time. You might notice things, as Emma says, you might notice them more often. We can do telephone and video consultations with you, and I've done those before at times where the dog has been perhaps too stressed by visitors to visit their home, and we need to get them onto some protocol to help them straight away, and then we can take it to the next stage. We are all sitting in that place at the moment. So do contact a registered behaviourist for help. Don't delay it, because a lot of us will have payment plans anyway if you're struggling, or your pet insurance might cover it. So your dogs and cats, they need your support right now. It's a difficult one, because obviously we've all got family priorities as well, but I don't want anyone who is at risk to feel like they can't seek help.
And I guess you will have covered this possibly already, Karen, but I wonder whether we should be thinking about what happens when everything goes back to normal, because I'm guessing that there are a lot of dogs who are suddenly absolutely loving the fact that their owners are there for 24 hours a day, and suddenly that is going to change. Would that be a problem? Could that be a problem?
Yes, definitely. I think that the dogs adapt very quickly, and obviously they're very social. So it might be that they already didn't like the fact that you were going away. They will get accustomed to you being there. So if there's a sudden change, then they will notice that. Whether that impacts them all as badly as each other, I don't know. If they've got a predisposition to it, and you've seen it already, you need to make extra preparation. So what I would do is make sure that they aren't sitting on your knee the entire time, that you do have a routine for them that involves some time apart, that you build up the time that they spend self-soothing with their own toys, their own games. Don't just play with them the entire time when it's your time with them. Do let them do things by themselves. And there's lots of activities. Again, there's some on my YouTube channel, or there's loads and loads of ideas online to let them just enjoy their time together on their own, rather, while you're around, and then that should alleviate it. But help is there if you are anticipating this is going to be a problem, or if it happens and you weren't expecting it. The help is there. We're all raring to go. So do ask.
I think it's just we just need to be aware that we've got to anticipate these things ahead of time, I think.
And I think preparation is good. It's practical. It helps us feel positive. So any final words, Emma?
I know that lots of people will struggle mentally with this time, and I just from a humanity point of view, I would just say try and stay in touch with your friends. When you were talking about the puppy socializing, while it's still allowed, if you've got people who've got dogs that you trust, you could always say, well, look, I'm going to the park at a certain time. The owners can still be a distance away and the dogs can play together, I'm guessing. And while that's still possible, get your puppies out there if you can, particularly if they're vaccinated, obviously. Take them out and about, carrying them, as Karen said, so that you can still carry on the habituation. But just look after each other. I think, there's a lot of negativity on social media. There's a lot of people moaning, and I understand that. We're trapped in our house as well. But just remember that there will be positive things that come out of it, and enjoy the time you've got with your animals, because we're all getting more time with them than we used to. So make the most of that.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you, Emma, for your time. I hope this helps anyone. If you need to get hold of either Emma or myself, we're both on Facebook. So Emma Milne, Karen Wild, you can contact us through there. Everyone else is on Facebook, and all our contact details will be on there if you need to email us as well. And I'll put my contact details in the podcast notes too, so you can email me if you need to. Just encourage you to, stay calm, stay there, stay safe, and we will get to the other side of this. We will. It will be a while, but it will be worth it. And just yourselves. Thanks, Emma.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Take care of yourself.